What's the most FCKED up thing you saw at a sleepover? Kid who had a pee jar in his closet. It was a gallon pickle jar. If he had to pee in the middle of the night he had to use the jar. Once his mom put us in his room for the night. We weren't allowed to leave his room until she came to get us the next morning. How did they make sure of that? The doorknob was turned around backwards so they could lock us in. Wasn't the night. It was the morning after. I was at a friend's house in the big city when I was maybe 8 or 9. I had gone to the bathroom for NR1 and gone out. Nothing strange. Then my friend goes in after me and comes back out. About 10 minutes later his mom goes mental and screams at me. At first I don't understand what it's about, but then she points me to the bathroom where there's a big puddle of piss on the floor. She made me clean up her son's piss. Because he'd told her I had done it. Needless to say, I didn't really speak to my friend after that. Was an awkward breakfast. When I was 12. We went on a family trip to Vegas. I woke up in the hotel to my parents having sex in the bed next to me. I was trapped and had nowhere to go. My mom said something along the lines of, "Stop, we're gonna wake up the kids." My dad gets up, walks over to our bed and rips the blankets off our faces and said, "See, fast asleep." I should have won an Oscar. It would have only been better if you had your eyes wide open, blank stare. I feel like someone like this would have just made direct eye contact and repeated, "Fast asleep." I was 13 to 14 and staying the night at a friend's house with 2 other girls. When we were woken up by a loud popping noise from her brother's room. Naturally 4 curious girls went to see what the hell he was doing at 3 in the morning. Her mom came running up the stairs about the time we entered his room. And quickly herded us back out of his room in hysterics. It took my brain forever to register that he had shot himself in the chest. Luckily he survived. And I never had another sleepover at someone else's house again. Plenty of nightmares though. My friend starting having phone sex with her BF while we were watching a Pixar movie. I hid in the bathroom for like 20 minutes so I could convince her I was sick so I could get a ride home from my mom. We were also in JR hot. One time I was at a friend's house for a sleepover and he and another friend held me down on the couch and tried to light my hair on fire with lighters. I managed to break free and ran upstairs and asked my friend's mom to let me use the phone. Mom came promptly to pick me up. Needless to say, I was not on speaking terms with the other 2 again. When I was around 13 to 14, a kid I invited over to my sleepover birthday party decided to strip down to his tidy whities right before cake and ice cream. Myself, my parents, friends and relatives were mortified. Apparently it was normal behavior at his house. Maybe he didn't want to get cake and ice cream all over his clothes. When I was in elementary school, I got invited with my sister to a birthday party of one of her friends. Everything was going fine for most of the night. And then the catastrophe happened. Her mom came down to the basement and was clearly very upset. But didn't explain why. She then had each of us line up on the stairs from the basement to the ground level of the house and brought us in one by one. I wasn't the first in line, but no one was telling us what happened once it was their turn. Finally I was up. And her mom took me into the bathroom and showed me a trash can with a poop in it. She was basically on the verge of tears. Pointing to the trash can and asking me, "Is this your poop? Is this your poop?" It wasn't. We never found out whose it was. Or at least I wasn't told. We have joked that someone will finally come forward on their deathbed. But my sister and I have since lost contact with those girls. So we may never know. Woke up to my friend watching porn on the PS3. That happened to me once a good 9 to 10 years ago. Too bad I was the one watching. It was a friend's birthday slumber party. So there were quite a few of us. We were all sitting at the kitchen table and one of the girls vomited. And then in spectacular domino fashion everyone else started to vomit too. It was really bizarre. My friend's older brother would get mad at her for small things, went in his room, lost the TV remote, shut a door too loudly and proceed to beat the speep out of her, pull her hair and hold her down and punch her in the sides, literally throw her across the room. He was almost 10 years older than us and easily had 100 to 150 pounds on her. He would eventually tire from the beatings, leave the room, and she would go back to playing with me like nothing happened. I remember being so unbelievably shocked by it, but eventually became desensitized because of how normal it seemed to her, and how unfazed she was by it. Saw my friend's parents having sex. Parents had no idea me and my friends saw them. Hold the phone. Little Timmy's parents were getting kinky while their child's friends were there. Balls it. I remember we did a secondary school bonding thing in our first year where you effectively go to a summer camp for the weekend with the whole year group. About 211 to 12-year-olds. To get to know everyone. Sleeping arrangements were in dormitories with bunk beds, separated by gender. About 30 to a room. Lights go out in my dorm. No teachers. Just 30 11 to 12-year-olds that don't know each other that well. A kid farts. Hilarious. Someone else farts. A few others. Then, I vividly remember a distinct sloppy sound followed by a panicked "oh." A kid shat himself. I would also like to note, this was not the only public pants speeping by this kid. He did it again final year during our Duke of Edinburgh Award expedition overnight whilst camping. I was sharing a tent with him. That's a whole different story. Not really peeped up, but I was terrified. One night I slept over at my friend's house. I wake up in the middle of the night because I felt sick. However, my friend wasn't in his bed and both clocks were broken and stuck at some random time like 1:38 a.m. or something. I was convinced that time had frozen and everyone disappeared. I remember crying and being too scared to go downstairs to check the microwave clock. Eventually I went into his parents' room and woke up his parents. My friend was sleeping in his parents' bed too. LOL undefined. I remember I was once wishing for time to stop. And all of a sudden I felt really weird in my shins. And when I looked up, my mom wasn't moving and I got super scared. Obviously time didn't stop as she moved a few moments later and there was background sound that I didn't realize was there. Not saw directly, but heard of. I had a friend in middle school who went to Texas to see family every year and got to bring a friend. I often hoped to be picked. Until I heard that it was a tradition for her grandfather to graze his balls on the hands and face of whoever came with her while they were sleeping. She always laughed and said it wasn't a big deal. That's just how he was. I never mentioned wanting to go again and only now as an adult. Do I really? How truly messed up that was, and if she was / is okay. I took a bath and when I got out my friend told her mom I had soap in my bag. I never said that and her mom made me get back in the bath and washed my bits for wrong now that I'm an adult and think about it. Wait. How old were you? I too gonna say between 7 or older than 9 for sure. I've never forgotten it. But it's always made me feel weird. We were playing hide and seek with my friend's little sister and I went into the unlocked bathroom while loudly saying, "Where could she be? Ma even here?" The little sister was 5. We were 10 and the father was jackhammering his dick while staring at himself in the bathroom mirror and had his other hand tweaking his nipple. I left and walked home. Daft peep, he was masturbating to himself? You've gotta love yourself first. Found my friend's older brother's anime body pillow. He had clearly did the dirty with it. One of my BFF's dads tried to get me drunk and made a pass at me. I was 15 and staying at my one girlfriend's house. Her dad tried to be cool and buy us wine coolers. So she and I were up drinking and listening to music in her room. Her dad had to listening right outside of the door because when I went out into the hallway he popped right up in my face. He started getting way too close and handsy. This was not my first rodeo. I have been dodging my mom's sugar daddy / BF for years. So I saw what was happening and escaped into the bathroom, I pretended to be sick until he left the hallway. I was friends with his daughter until college. I just made sure to never be alone with her dad again. Sad thing is I wasn't her only friend who he tried things with, but we never talked about it until years later. When I was in the 6th grade, I was going to stay the night at a friend's house, but we ended up at another kid's down the street. This guy ended up talking about how he would hump his bed until there was a wet spot on his boxers. He ended up doing this while we were in the room watching TV and then showed us the wet spot. And that was how I learned how to jerk off. Same. I was so confused when I saw the wet spot in my bed after doing this. I actually ran to my parents asking them why my pee was sticky, haha. When I was like 9 or 10, I spent the night at a friend's house. I knew his mom was pretty strict, but holy speed did I find out how much. He did something really minor like leave his socks in the living room, and she started shouting at him like he left a turd on the floor or something. Then he pissed her off again that night and she wailed on his ass so hard that it scared me. She was a psycho the way she was spanking and shouting at him. I hated her guts after that night. A friend of mine went to have a sleepover at his friend's house after the friend threw a baby shower. Not only was the friend's pregnant girlfriend drinking and smoking weed, but my friend said that he had to sleep on the floor and noticed things crawling along the floor. They were maggots. He ended up sleeping in his car. We had put up a tent in my buddy's backyard. There was a catwalk that his backyard had a gate to, that went down between the houses and eventually came to a school field. It was late. We were chilling in the tent laughing and eating snacks, when we heard voices coming down the path. There were shrubs along the fence line, except for the gate area, so they couldn't see us. But we snuck out and hid in the bushes and were going to scare them when they walked past. But the closer they got, the older they sounded. One guy sounded really angry. So we decided to stay super quiet, let them pass, and go back to the tent. When they got just past the house, the dude was pressuring this girl to give him a blowjob right then and there. She didn't want to, but gave it after asking a couple times. We had to sit there for like 10 minutes until he came, and were terrified that if we made a sound he would see us and kill us. We were probably around 12 years old. Scary speep. I saw porn for the first time. We were watching movies on my friend's TV and fell asleep watching. Must have been on Cinemax or something, because I woke up in the middle of the night. It was a porno of a man and woman in the shower. That was really awkward since I was 13 and hadn't experienced anything like that. I was too scared to turn it off because her parents were up in another room and I didn't want them to know I was awake. So I pretended to be asleep. I eventually fell back to sleep, but it took forever. The worst was her parents fighting. They would yell, curse, hit each other, and were always drunk. What's the most beeped up is I stayed there so often that it became sort of normal to me. I didn't like it, but it wasn't something I could stop. I had so many weird and inappropriate conversations with her drunk mother. Conversations about me and my friend's sex lives or about her problems. The worst was when he shoved her into a metal pole and it bent. I didn't see it happen, but that pole was like a twisted monument to the violence that regularly took place. All the sleepovers there in my teens messed me up more than I thought. If I told my parents the whole truth of how bad it was, I don't think they would have let me sleep over. The dad's mistress came over. Apparently the mother knew of her existence and it had been putting a strain on things. My buddy and I hid in the basement while the wife and mistress were screaming at each other upstairs. Shockingly did not cause a divorce. My mom screaming at us for covering the kitchen floor with water and dish soap at 2 a.m. so we could go skating. At the time I really couldn't understand what she was so upset about. But, Mom, we're helping clean. Shaving cream works better. My poor parents. When I was about 15, there was a couple in my cousin's congregation that offered to host a sleepover for some of the teen girls. I was staying with my cousin at the time, so I went with her to their house for the sleepover. When I got there, I realized that this couple only had one kid. And it was a little boy. Maybe 6 or 7 years old. The couple set us 5 teenaged girls up in the basement. It was furnished and carpeted. Not a creepy basement, and the wife set out a bunch of snacks, and then we didn't see her or the little boy the rest of the night. But the 30-something dad spent most of the evening with us, offering us sips of his Kahlua drink and leaving the liquor cabinet doors open when he would announce that he was going to another room. I was creeped out. But I was so sheltered at the time that I didn't understand why exactly until years later. Girl put a massive ant in her vagina right in front of me like it was nothing. Same girl introduced my sisters and I to the choke yourself out game, where you take several deep breaths / hyperventilate and hold your breath until you pass out. Whoever fakes it had to sleep alone. Needless to say, my mom was pissed when she found us all unconscious in different areas of the bedroom. My friend jerking off naked. Except his white socks. Kind of weird. 5 of us at a friend's mom's house in high school. 17-18 woke up and there were 4 of us. One of the guys there was apparently in the mom's room beeping the guy's mother. The worst part? Apparently it wasn't a new thing. The mom had been picking off her sons' friends and f***ing them to make her ex-husband jealous. Undefined. I bet the son plays COD. Not something I saw, but one of my friends in high school told a group of us girls at a sleepover that she'd been babysitting the previous weekend, and the girl reported to her that she was being molested by her uncle. My friend was so upset and scared to tell her parents. They were family friends and hadn't told anyone. We made her go upstairs and tell her mom. Her mom called the other family. And we basically heard both her parents sobbing off and on all night. The other parents called the cops, and as far as I recall, the uncle was arrested and spent some time in prison. My friend was really scared she'd have to speak in court, but didn't have to. A kid got on the treadmill and put it as fast as it could go. He tripped and held onto the handles as his feet and legs were dragging on it. Skin was peeling off everywhere. He literally skinned his own legs. He is me. I was the stupid kid. Not me. But my friend's story. She went to a sleepover at a Catholic girl's house. The girl said the word penis and her mom beat her with a belt for 15 minutes straight. She never stayed at that girl's house again. When I was 9 and in Girl Scouts, we had a troop sleepover party that was relatively unsupervised, and at some point girls just started reaching down each other's pants and ripping their underwear out. Other girls were shoving worn socks in each other's mouths and pulling hair. I just remember sitting in a corner and guarding myself with a ping pong paddle. Undefined. A kid walked on the backyard monkey bars. Slipped. Fell. Hit his chin. Bit his tongue off. Not me, but a friend. When we were 14. She went to a girl's house for a sleepover. Girl's dad let them hang out in the garage and drink beer. Later my friend was sitting outside alone. And the dad came out and started talking to her. Then he tried to kiss her. And as she backs away, the mom walked out and caught him. She started screaming at both of them. And told my friend she needed to leave. She was 14 and drunk, and the girl whose house it was told her mom that was bullspeep and she was staying. My friend said she couldn't sleep all night. The next morning the mom took my friend alone into the bedroom and apologized and said they were having marital problems and he had cheated on her before. Hopefully it wasn't with any other kids. Undefined. The legal age of consent was 14 at the time, Canada in the mid-2000s. And she probably thought it was her fault. After she got yelled at. And please, if you see someone abusing a child, or something doesn't seem right, say something. 2 friends were watching porn when my dad walked into the room. Saw me on my bed and looked at them. Saw the screen and just said, "Beep this." I'd have told them to stop, but the phone was facing the door and my bed was at the opposite side of the room. I was staying at my girlfriend's apartment one night and I was woken up by a very loud sound. I raised up and looked around, but everything was normal and she was still asleep, so I thought whatever, I must have imagined it. After falling back asleep, we were both woken up by the police banging on the door. The sound I heard was a gunshot hitting her apartment, fired off by a crack addict attempting to commit suicide in the parking lot. Not a traditional sleepover, but still some crazy speep. I learned my family was poor. Friend's house was like a mansion to me, when in fact it was a fairly average two-story. They had nice appliances, good food, etc. Became keenly aware of the class divide that day. I was in the 4th grade and me and 3 of my friends were sleeping over at one of their houses. We all had our sleeping bags in a row on the floor and we're getting ready to go to bed. My bag was up against the wall on my right and to my left was one of my friends. Note: he was really big for a 4th grader and I was very small for a 4th grader. As he was getting in a comfortable position, he rolled over on top of me. It wouldn't have been that bad if it weren't for the fact that he then proceeded to rip ass and thought it was funny pinning me down as I suffocated in his fumes. I tried to get out but I was stuck up against the wall. Myself, a friend and his GF were all at some random friend's house, and all sleeping in the lounge. I'm lying there, more or less fully clothed in a sleeping bag in the lounge. Now, I don't know if you've ever tried to sleep in a sleeping bag indoors, but it doesn't work very well. They're designed on the assumption you're in a tent in the freezing cold. Inside a building they tend to get quite warm. Okay. Stupidly hot. So, I'm lying in the sleeping bag, with my legs gently cooking, and I hear whispered voices. Is he asleep? I think so. Before long, my friend is frantically beeping his GF. And the only thing I can think is, my God, I need to take my trousers off. My friend's alcoholic father passed out in a puddle of piss and vomit on the living room floor. Not really beeped up for anyone other than me. But reading all these made me want to share. I got my first period at a sleepover. Her dad was a single dad, so obvi I'm not going to him. Mortified. Sleeping bag just drenched in blood. I sit in the bathroom for I don't know how long, trying to work up the courage to ask the older sister for help. While she was understanding, she offered me tampons, not ready for that yet. And pads designed specifically for thongs. Why they even make those I'll never know. Another few hours mortified and in pain sitting in the bathroom, I slap as many thong pads and TP in my underwear as I can and just ditched the sleeping bag for a blanket on the floor. I truly became a woman that night. My best mate's mom get beaten up by her partner at the dinner table because I was allowed to stay the night. Thankfully we hid. Called his dad, who came over and gave that prick the hiding of his life. After he saw what he did to his ex, he broke the guy's head through the toilet bowl. Never saw a guy literally jump over a 6-foot fence till that day. He cleared the whole thing in one bound to get away from the dad. I went to my first ever sleepover when I was about 9. It was just my friend and I. I cannot tell you how excited I was. We made plans to stay up late, play board games, watch movies. It was going to be amazing. At about 9:30 p.m. his other friends called and invited him to go to a laser tag place with them. His mom told him to go have fun, and I slept alone in his room. So that sucked. Saw my friend's dad naked twice. Crashing at a mate's house when I was 15, slept on the lounge room floor on a mattress, and it was a hot night, so was wearing only boxer shorts and now blanket. Now, he had an old tabby cat that randomly used to flip out. It would race off and go ballistic at nothing in particular, scratching and barreling around the room. Cat was also half blind. I knew this as used to hang out with him all the time. But it was still a shock in the middle of the night to wake up to his cat running full tilt at my arsehole. Woke up to his little head crashing into my snoozing gooch, yowling and doing his mental cat things. To this day I'm lucky it didn't tear my balls off. One of my friends was jacking off to pictures of little girls, so I punched him in the cock and called his mom to come pick him up, and I never saw him since. I hope he brought his own pictures. It was on his phone. I was at my best friend's house in the 4th grade and his mom would always come home drunk. Well, one time she got so drunk she came into my friend's room and started to strip in front of us. Thankfully I don't talk to his mom anymore. When I was 13, my friend's adult brother and his buddy raped a girl upstairs while us kids played video games in the living room. We were so loud and obvious we didn't notice until this girl year older than us came running down the stairs half naked and bawling while being chased by two 19-year-old men. My friend used to get beat up by his dad. It happened in front of me at a sleepover once and I'll never forget it. Porn everywhere. My friend's dad would have my friend go find porn and have him print it off, and there were stacks of printed pictures all over their apartment. When I asked him about it, he made it seem like this was normal life for him.